Tristen Harris is from both Mad Men and Triple R, and tonight he's in conversation with local identity artist, writer and super dad to 5-month-old Louie, Tim Molloy. After the discussion, there'll be an opportunity for you guys to take part, so think of any questions you might have, and without further ado, let's welcome Tristen and Tim.
Thanks everyone. So, first I want to say congratulations Tim on your Aurealis nomination.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
You've got, this is your second Aurealis nomination. This is for, obviously, your new book, Mr Unpronounceable Adventures. First one, Shine, Shakes and Laughs.
It was sadly a loser. Hopefully this year, it'll be the year.
Well, I hope so. Look, I've read this book, this one here. I read it when I first got it, when you first brought it out, and then I've read it twice today because I flew to Sydney and back, and I read it on the way up and I read it on the way back as well. And there's bits in there that, look, it's a circular story. There's things that come back over and over and over again, and it wasn't. And I'd never really picked that up the first or the second time. It was the third time I started seeing things going, that's from an earlier story, and that's from when, right. And one of the things I wanted to know was how much of that was planned, because this goes back quite a way.
Yeah, it's 10 years really, or even longer, the earliest stories. I don't know. I think there was a certain point where I realized that it was happening, maybe, like a lot of it seems to just happen. But there was a certain point where at least I realized that there was an opportunity to keep coming back to these moments, and then that was important for some reason. I think I know why it's important to come back to those moments for some reason. But yeah, it at a certain point it became very exciting to do that, to use the medium to do that. It's almost like time travel, Comics is good that way. Like, you can, if you're watching a movie, where they do that kind of thing, it's still linear, but with a comic you can actually literally go back, in time, those many pages and go, oh, here we are again at this point in time. So, don't know.
Well, you started, I noticed that the first ones date back to about 2005.
Yeah, well, they're actually redrawings of earlier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the earlier ones were from 2001, maybe.
Right.
But they looked so crappy that I had to, because it was originally going to be published. This thing was going to happen in 2005. So I redrew them then. So that's why they have 2005 on them. But
okay.
Yeah, it's like the content goes back further.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When I was reading it, there's a lot of them that happened in 2005, and a lot that happened in 2012, and there's some smatterings of stuff in between, but it actually goes back a lot further than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, has anyone read Mr Unpronounceable Adventures yet?
Well, show of hands.
Okay. So, what we should probably cover is who Mr Unpronounceable is, because he is a very special character.
That's one way to put it. Is that the question?
Well, yeah, who is Mr Unpronounceable?
Well, I mean, the genesis of Mr Unpronounceable is from, there's an artist called Hallenwein who does lots of weird, freaky stuff. Hyperrealism, and there's a particular painting of his, I think, called A Free Spirit, I think is the name of the painting, which is a really sort of buttoned down kind of accountant sort of looking guy with like a ledger in front of him, and there's this incredible tension in the painting. It looks like the guy is just going to explode, out of nowhere. And that was the inspiration for Mr Unpronounceable. It was just one page out of many. I sort of had this idea of somebody who was so restrained by, the world or whatever. Or in fact, Hallenwein had the idea, and I saw the painting, and I took it a bit further. But I liked the idea of that, that restraint, and then within that, I think in the first comic it says, my mind is in an atom bomb going off in a concrete bunker deep below the ground. And that's who he is, really. I mean, he just sort of came out of there, and I thought he was just going to be, you know, one page out of many other sort of random, sort of surreal kind of comics that I was doing, but he just sort of kept coming back. But who he is now, I don't know. Like he's changing. He's become sort of like he's a wanderer, a seeker of secrets. He's insane. He's crazy.
Mostly insane.
Very, very crazy. He is not capable of dealing with the answers that he finds quite often. If he finds them, they tend to drive him mad, crazier than he already is. He dies a lot.
He dies a lot.
He's a necromancer. He's a dabbler in the dark arts. So he's into all kinds of weird sorcery. But he also has a very righteous kind of attitude towards things. You know, it's a very particular, personal moral compass. You know, that sometimes is very, very, set in stone. But I guess a lot of the time it's just spinning wildly in multiple dimensions. Yeah, I don't know. He's a weird guy.
When he says multiple dimensions, he means multiple dimensions. There is so much going on in here that he does die a lot, and he comes back and he meets himself countless times, kills himself. Not himself, but his doppelganger, which is basically him. Yeah, my brain's broken. But look, what I found about Mr. Unpronounceable is he seems to go through the pages in like a childlike wonder. Like everything is new to him as experience, he sort of bounces between shrieking in abject terror and giggling like a child, like just pure joy, and everything in between is sort of, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there isn't really much of a sort of, a null space for him. It's either completely terrifying or completely amazing, ridiculous. I guess, like we're just seeing, in the comics, we're just seeing him on his adventures. I mean, I imagine there are times where he just sort of sits, hangs out, doesn't really do anything. Probably not, though. I think probably all the time he's constantly searching for the secrets of the dead and like jumping into other dimensions and being harassed by monsters and, raising demons and things. There's probably no time at all where he's just chilling.
Well, there was one comic that I really liked where he ingested some hallucinogen, which he does a lot in this book. And his trip is, first scene he's sitting at a computer in an office, and then he's sitting on the couch with a family watching TV, and then he's watering the garden, and then he wakes up in a graveyard and he's like, that was a bad trip.
Yeah. Well, I sort of, with that one, that was back in the day, and I was young, and there were a few experiments myself with psychedelics. And I sort of wanted to...
I did wonder.
Yeah, well, I sort of wanted to... I wondered what it would be like for somebody who was living in a bizarre, just totally crazy dream, nightmare reality, who was also totally crazy, basically if your life is just an unending, never-ending bad trip, which is basically what his life is. Mm-hmm. What would it be like to take some psychedelics? And for him it was just to be in a mundane kind of picket fence kind of reality, with a kid who didn't like him and a wife who didn't understand him.
And he conveyed a lot in like 3 panels as well. Now, he does have a little cohort which you can see in the corner there, which is the Shrivelled Homunculus. Now, the Shrivelled Homunculus is himself a hallucinogen. It's like a...
Well, yeah.
How would you describe it?
An homunculus is, in traditional thought and occultism, not that I'm an expert, but it's kind of like a golem, not like the Lord of the Rings thing, but like the Jewish kind of monster, the Frankenstein. It's like made of, like with this one in any way. I'll just make it up, like I do. But he's made of like earwax and bits of leaves and blood and incantations and he. I'm not sure if Mr. Unpronounceable made him or if somebody else did or if there are lots of them, like there are lots of Mr. Unpronounceables, but he's at one like an individual. He's also sort of like a tool, you know, for magicians. You know, you slice a little bit off and eat it, and then, you know, everything goes crazy and you turn up in another dimension or something else awful happens. Quite often though, he is kind of like the sort of the straight guy. You know, like in the comic duo, he's like, oh. I always imagine him kind of shrugging and going, Mr. Unpronounceable's gone and done it again.
Well, there's the Tooth Fairy one where he's actually sitting there trying to warn Mr. Unpronounceable that the Tooth Fairy has actually come, and Mr. Unpronounceable's trying to lay a trap so he can
catch the Tooth Fairy.
Catch the Tooth Fairy.
It's useless. Mr. Unpronounceable pays no attention. He has no respect for the homunculus at all. It's a terrible situation for the homunculus. Just finds him, uses him. He sort of looks after him like he's his little baby or his child, but he's basically terribly irresponsible. That's what he's doing at all.
It's an intriguing character. Now, to say the least, look, this book is very much full of religious and cultural iconography, and all the way through it there's an eye, like there's usually a painting on an eye. Usually it's some kind of warning that if, you know, this eye is painted on something, chances are it's somewhere that Mr. Unpronounceable shouldn't be or shouldn't be dabbling in. So where did that idea come from?
Well, I mean, it's the all-seeing eye, really. I mean, the place that this all exists in is the city of the ever-open eye. You know, that's what it's called. It's a dream city. I guess there's a hierarchy. You know, there's like a religious order that controls everything, although not very well, because everything is just always constantly going crazy. But the all-seeing eye is sort of my riff on the ever-open eye is my riff on the all-seeing eye. You know, that sort of occult, conspiracy, paranoid kind of thing. But I don't know, like it's basically just like, you know, if you lived in a city that was called, you know, the city of Q, you know, in this world that Q would be everywhere, you know. So sometimes it's just, you know, the eye is just on a fish and chip shop or something, you know, like it doesn't necessarily mean that something awful is going to happen. Although, because you're reading a Mr. Unpronounceable comic, something awful is always going to happen. So that's why you pick that. Yeah. And it's constantly awful all the time. So.
Well, yeah. Now, do you ever steal iconography? Do you ever? Oh yeah. Because I noticed that there's the silent monks, and you know, you always call these things demons, but they're usually dressed up as bishops or something, riding, you know, Lovecraftian beasts.
I sort of I'm constantly just looking everywhere for religion and is a big one. You know, the sort of Catholicism was something that I went through myself. You know, so there's always going to be, you know, that weird kind of running away from the guilt, the pomp and the ceremony, and I guess sort of making everything, you know, resemble that is a good way of sort of probably still hanging on. I should probably just stop doing it and I would get over it. But it's I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just sort of aesthetically attracted to all religions. You know, all it's just so weird to me. You know, that stuff. It's weird. It's in the same. You know, I can look at some undiscovered creature at the bottom of the ocean. You know, with tentacles, and I can look at the Pope. And go, it's just as bizarre to me. You know, like the costumes and just the aesthetic. You know, but I mean, obviously there's an underlying meaning to the religion stuff that's all through it.
I had a feeling that you might be well read on a lot of the religious stuff that I've just, you know, from reading this and, you know, knowing you from around the place as well. But there's obviously going to be some influence as well from, well, you mentioned conspiracy kind of thing. I mean, and I don't know, you strike me as someone who is into the bizarre and the strange goings on of the universe.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, if you're gonna be doing a comic like this, you don't want to just be staring at a white wall. You want to be looking at the weirdest stuff that you can.
So you actively seek that out?
Yeah. I mean, the conspiracy stuff, I now consider myself totally skeptical of 99% of it. But there was a time.
Chemtrails?
Especially chemtrails. Even when I was batshit crazy with it, I was. That's not the one.
And the reptoids.
Oh, definitely the reptoids. But you know, it's like you want to go and find the weird stuff because it makes your brain go into the weird place. You know, like it's 4 a.m. and you're on the internet and you know it's time to do some comics. Those are good places to go sometimes. You know, if that's what you're writing about. But I don't know. I can definitely say that it's can be hazardous to your mental health sometimes.
I should say one of the first times I met Tim, he broke my brain by saying there's a hexagon on Saturn.
There is a hexagon on Saturn. That's true.
Yeah.
That's not a. That's
I immediately had to Google it and found there is a hexagon on Saturn.
Look it up.
Yeah.
Look it up.
And after that I was like, I've got to read this guy's comics. But now, I mentioned Lovecraft before, and this actually opens, you've got a quote from Lovecraft in here. How important is Lovecraft to your writing?
Well, I mean, it's pretty important. I think it's important to sort of cut off, to wear your influences on your sleeve, you know. I mean, I thought it was, you know, Lovecraft's definitely a big dude for me, you know, in terms of his style, like the way that he sort of makes you feel. The thing about Lovecraft that I love, that I think doesn't often get talked about is how hilarious he is. Like, it's his total lack of sense of humor is the best thing about him. You know, like he plays it so straight, but it's so wild. You know, because he was just so wild with his imagination. But maybe it was just the time he was writing in, the conventions of the prose. But to me, quite often it comes off at the same time. You know, like I'll be reading some Lovecraft or listening to an audiobook, as is often the case when you're drawing comics. You don't really have a lot of time to read, so you need to. Audiobooks are good. You know, I'll be terrified and haunted by a story, but there'll be a turn of phrase or like a something that'll happen which will just crack me up. You know, and it's I'm sure that was not how he intended it. I don't think he had that kind of sense of humor. But all that weird fiction stuff, you know, like it's a sort of it's not a forgotten time. It's kind of coming back. You know, it'll always come back because it was an important kind of part of this. You know, like horror. You know, is a big thing. You can't have horror without Lovecraft. So, old school.
Well, now, Mr. Unpronounceable Adventures. This, I was going to say follows on, but this is the second book that you've released. The first one was at Shine, Shakes and Laughs. And there was no English in there at all. It was all alien language, which does appear in Mr. Unpronounceable as well. But it just seems the language that you've used in Mr. Unpronounceable, he speaks like, I don't know, he's got a very, well, his vocabulary is huge, and he's got a very specific way of speaking, and going from having no dialogue to, you know, the way he speaks, it's just such a leap. I mean, did you find the transition to to writing like that? You know, were you always doing no language and then you went to this?
No, it's all concurrent, really. I think, you know, sometimes you're in the mood to just tell a story visually, which is an exciting thing to be able to do, you know, just sort of convey some happenings, you know. It might just be some guy, some girl walking from A to B, you know, through some doors, up a hill, and then there's a monster, you know. And that's exciting to do though. I mean, like, you know, you can show that to anybody on the planet and they can go, well, that's that, you know. inherently that's an incredibly fascinating kind of art, medium to be working in, to be able to do that, which is why I do the silent stuff, like it feels inherently cool, but in the meantime I'm doing all the ridiculously wordy stuff as well. They go hand in hand. Sometimes you need a break from the other, so.
Well, in this book you'll have someone walking from A to B, and then at the end there's a giant monster. But when
that's actually most of it. Most of it is.
But when the characters are meeting this one, well, when Mr. Unpronounceable is meeting whatever fate has come upon him, he it all just starts exclaiming like Dr. Smith in Lost in Space.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way he reacts to everything, shrieking and then ultimately giggling. While he's getting licked by a moon with 1,000 faces, for instance, or being carried out on a wave of maggots.
That's actually from a Lovecraft story.
Oh, is it?
The moon. There's some. It's an obscure story. It's not one of the ones that you hear about. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a lunatic in an asylum. They call them lunatics in those days, and he shrieks, "The moon! It has 1,000 faces!" And like that. That phrase is like, that's all I need, and then 20 pages of just the ending is I just need Mr. Unpronounceable to shriek that, and like literally the moon comes down and licks him. Why not?
And he giggles.
Yeah.
He giggles sweetly.
The moon doesn't giggle.
No. So I suppose your actual style, like how you draw. I can sort of tell from the earlier stuff, and what I'm now found out has been redrawn. That was ink and paper. Do you still use ink and paper? Because I believe a lot of it's done digitally now.
Yeah. Most of it is digitally done now. Well, in fact, it's all done digitally now. I'll still, scrap things out on bits of paper with a pen. But I don't know. The digital stuff is the ability to do things digitally is amazing. I recently got a little handheld, kind of drawing tablet that I can put in a bag and take with me wherever I go, and it's I can do the whole thing on that, which is really exciting. I can do that in the backyard, I can do it at the pub, although that lasts about half an hour before the booze kicks in. But yeah, it's never really been about the medium or the pain of the ink for me. I know that's a big thing for a lot of artists, and I respect that, but it's just not for me.
Getting ideas down.
Just smashing it out is the best. Like
you're faster.
Oh yeah. Once I started, actually, I got a big drawing tablet in my house, which was huge. And it's still there, but I don't use it anymore. In favour of the little one that I have, which I can just put on my lap. I was noticing my productivity increased by sort of 50, 70%. Can't really put a number on it, but
wow.
Faster the better. Just smash out the pages. If you're doing comics, it's a glacial medium. It just goes so slowly. Faster than animation, which is what I used to do, or briefly did. But
so now you're working so fast. More Mr. Unpronounceable?
Yes, I'm working on Mr. Unpronounceable Adventures Volume 2. It's called Mr. Unpronounceable and the Sect of the Bleeding Eye. And I'm honing in on the religion thing. If 213 pages of vague, nods weren't enough, I'm really honing in this time. So it's going to be weird, as opposed to this is sort of, it has a cohesion because of the way that I wrote it. Like they all tie in together, but they're still very separate stories, whereas the new one is much the same. But at least in my mind, it's all kind of been written at the same time, so it might be a little bit more, slightly more cohesive.
Right. I look forward to reading it, and I look forward to reading it like twice in one day, like I did today as well.
It's bad for you.
Once
a
I
day.
had some crazy.
Just read it every day, Tristen.
Oh, maybe I could. Maybe I should. So, does anyone have any questions for Tim?
Well, you just talking about the speed of your drawing. I'm just wondering whether the early work seems different to you now and maybe a bit slower. Some of the stuff about endless journeys you know what I mean? Some of the time that was in your comics, has it speeded up your work and then speeded up the narrative to make it quicker?
Do I even need this? Just so they've heard my voice. Can you all hear me anyway?
Yeah.
It's kind of annoying. It's kind of my
I
face.
can't hear you in the front though.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Joe? I don't think it's affected the content at all. I hope it hasn't. You don't want that. You don't want it to affect the content.
I feel like when you're working on something really long and it takes ages, then it can change the way you end it.
Yeah. It still takes ages though. Like it still takes a year to do like a comic. So it's not like I look forward to when we're all 100 years old. Oh no, 150 on the space station, and you can just think, there's my comic, and it'll print out, and it'll be the whole thing, and you can just pass it around, and we can all have a little book thing at a bookstore on the space station. You know, like I mean, I hope that
Quicker the better.
when that day comes, it won't affect the content.
I do wonder how much things change. Like if you start out with one idea and then you halfway through one panel and then it's just like, oh no, this is just taking a crazy turn. What if I went down this route instead?
Well, I'm going to use this again since you're.
I'm used to using these things.
My voice sounds like at least as good. Worse, slightly worse, but that's good.
You still got that accent.
No, yeah. I'll never lose it. Definitely, you go. The way that I write is very haphazard. Would be the best way to describe it. Like boneheaded. I don't know. Like I'll go off in a direction, and I'll get like 5 pages in, not knowing what happens 30 pages later. Not even knowing at that point that it's a 30-page story. But I'll get 10 pages in and go, oh, this story is actually going to be like 30, 40 pages. But I've gone in the wrong direction, so I just throw all those pages away and I have to start again. Like sometimes it takes actually creating something and really making it sort of real to throw it away, make it better somehow somewhere else. Which is why it takes so long, because I'm not constantly doing that. I'm not in the habit of throwing 10 pages of time away, but I'm getting better at sort of at least plotting things out. But I don't know. I'm working on 4 stories at the moment, and I don't know how any of them end. So that's an indication of how little I know of what I'm doing. It's that. One of them, I don't know how it begins.
Right.
You know what happens in the middle, and that's the middle. The middle bit's the important bit, right?
Sure.
Yeah. The beginning and the end will take care of themselves.
In your brain.
Yeah.
My God. Anyone else have any questions?
So when you're talking about this tablet, what does that look like, and what's the process about that?
It's just like a just like a tablet. It's like an iPad but bigger, and you just draw on it. You know how to.
No.
It's like a computer.
Screen?
It's a computer screen.
Yeah.
And the tablet's separate?
No, it's just one thing.
Oh, it's like an iPad.
It's like an iPad, but like a PC.
Yeah.
So
Oh, so it's a PC.
it's a PC.
Oh,
Yeah, so you run.
But it's touch.
Yeah, it's got
With a
touch
stylus.
and it's got a stylus. It's a Cintiq kind of Wacom thing, so it's got like touch sensitivity and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to draw on. It's like drawing with sunlight.
I want one.
Yeah, you should get one. I'm not working for. I wish I was working for.
You know, if we had been doing this 10 years ago and I read this book and you said, yeah, I did the whole thing on a tablet, and like, just one tablet. This is taking a lot of tabs here.
Yeah. No, more like 4. Anyone else?
What other comics influence? What is
Yeah.
Other comics?
comics
Um,
to your mind?
Well, in chronological order, Asterix, Tintin, and then Disney stuff. I was drawing comics when I was a kid. So I was already influenced.
You grew up reading.
Yeah, I grew up, but
Did you discover some more advanced
2000 AD.
kind?
Yeah, 2000 AD when I was about 13 or 14. That was the moment where I sort of realized you could you know, there's this and there's that, but having all of these different stories all together in the same place really made my brain, you know, you can tell all these different stories, you know. Not that I was telling lots of different stories, I was sort of ripping things off. And then I got into things like Milk and Cheese by not Evan Dando, he's from
The Lemonheads.
The Lemonheads. Evan Dawkin. Milk and Cheese was a big thing, and all of my earliest comics were just Milk and Cheese rip-offs, basically. And I don't know. And then I started doing them and getting them out there, and other people were showing me things. You know, like somebody showed me some Mobius, you know, when I was 19, 20, and I was already sort of self-publishing, and I think they showed it to me because like, you'd like this, you know. And I looked at it and I was like, I should never own any Mobius because I would just rip this off way too much. And I've kind of looked at Mobius over the years because, you know, I'm very, very good at ripping things off. I try not to.
Did you have access to a translation of the French Belgian library of comics? Like various things like I'm obviously from France.
Yes.
And comics is like there is books, but there is also comics.
Huge.
And it's not only Asterix and Tintin.
Oh yeah.
If you're talking about Lovecraft or Edgar Poe, there is the equivalent of those authors in comics, and there is things like Rosinski, Vanham, Moebius, or of course when I need the names, they don't come to my mind. One name I would recommend especially would be Silence.
Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a story of a dumb kid in a small village in France with witches, and like they would, you know, hang the crow on the door of the people. I mean, that kind of comics you
Yeah.
never have heard of. Or
Well, I'm actually kind of dumb when it comes to comics. Like I don't, you know, I sort of, I'm really bad. I haven't actually, I've read comics all my life, but it's been pretty sporadic, and there have been years and years and years where I haven't read any other comics at all on purpose. You know, like I think I was a lot more militant about it when I was younger. You know, I was just like, you know, I need to stay away from my medium. I need to. I've always. I think I'm a lot less precious about it these days, but I was 20 years old once, you know, and there was this like, oh, I need to like, you know, this is my art, you know, and an important thing is to like, can't look at any comics for years. I need to watch films. I need to like go to the gallery and you know, I'm an artist. I'm not a comic artist. I'm an artist. You know, so I'm not very well schooled, but you know, at this point I'm like, I'm old now. I just read all the comics I can and probably steal a lot. Probably. Silence. I'll
Just write it down for him.
Yeah.
What was that crazy book that you showed me once? It was like a big book full of crazy things
Oh.
that you've been chasing for a while.
The
It's the Seraphim or something?
Codex Seraphinus.
Yes.
The Codex. Everybody should have, if you don't know what that book is, the Codex Seraphinanus, I think, or
Anyone know this? You guys know it?
you know that one?
Vaguely,
It's a famous book. It's very weird. It's an encyclopedia basically from another world, I guess, or you know, another dimension, and it's by an Italian architect, made in the 80s. Incredibly bizarre. Once again, no, it blows that out of the water. Yeah, it's a visual. It's like it's a huge book, and it's pictures. It's very surreal. You know, like it's.
We are in a bookstore. I wonder if.
Yeah, we can look it up.
I can't believe they don't stock it. Like, it's actually being re-released. I just read the other day. It's a fascinating book. I only discovered it because, you know, you put your stuff out on the internet and you do weird stuff, and people are like, "Have you seen this?" Probably going, "Are you ripping this off?"
Yeah.
And like I'm not, but now I am.
Yes.
I think it was a lot of the hieroglyphic stuff that I do. Like that was the main thing with the all the script and the language that happens. This encyclopedia is an object from another dimension. Basically, it's beautiful and confounding, and you kind of don't want to look at it for too long because you kind of just fall onto it and have nightmares or.
You showed me after I'd had about 5 or 6 drinks.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to pass out.
Yeah,
So
crazy.
really, it's very odd.
I'd like, in some way, I'd like some of the work that I do to sort of feel that way, like you're actually. The Mr Unpronounceable stuff is one thing, but the silent stuff with the hieroglyphics, I'd like it to feel like it's, you picked up something from another world, that's fallen through a crack or something, and I don't know. Weird is good.
Any more questions for Tim? No? Alright, well, I think we're.
Let's go on more.
Oh, here we go. No, go for it.
About characters, you have any of those, right?
Yes.
I was more intrigued about this one.
MP.
MP.
Yeah. He's I don't know. I love that guy. He for me was like my my sort of antidote to the darkness and chaos. I don't know, I'm feeling pretty good in my life right now, so I don't really feel like I need an antidote, but there was a time where Mr. Unpronounceable felt pretty dark to me, and it was...
Do you identify yourself as Mr. Unpronounceable?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think he's my... I don't want to say my dark side. I'm not like Stephen King, dark half or anything, but yeah.
I am also in the graphic, not that I do much, but I believe that graphic design, graphic novels, when it's coming from you, are the way to express what you want to,
Repress.
Yeah.
And if you've done 5% of what happens in
Well,
I don't know you at all.
It's not a confession. It's not a confession, but it is definitely any art is in a way like an emotional diary. There's stuff going on.
It's like a way of thinking.
Yeah. It's a sort of we're complex people, human beings. We're very fascinating creatures, and we don't just have this one stream of our own thought. There are different levels, and this stuff for me is just a couple of those levels mixed together with a dash of that and a dash of that. But it's been different things at different times. It's been like at a certain point I just was like, no more. I'm killing him off. I don't want to do this anymore because it's like I had a suspicion that I was kind of derailing my life, my personal life, in order to sort of have kind of, emotional fuel to do the work, which is stupid. It's the dumbest thing you could ever do. But I was young once, and people do that when they're young, when they're artists. But you can't kill him.
No.
But he comes back.
That's the beauty of
So,
Mr. Unpronounceable.
He came back.
I can tell that there's a couple of comics in here where I'm like, I reckon you put the end at this.
Yeah.
Meant the end. And
Yeah.
it's just like, oh no, wait.
Yeah.
No, he discovers himself in a coffin and then stabs himself in the chest and finds a telescope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there he is at the end of the telescope.
Yeah. Well, there's no more questions. We'll wrap it up. But I do recommend this book. I've got mine signed as well, and he's drawn a little Mr. Unpronounceable in there. It's one of my treasured possessions. So yeah, maybe you can sign some for these guys if you feel the need. Yeah. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.